Hello, people of the music universe. I am Melissa Auf der Mauer, and you're on BackstageAxxess.com, where the real show begins.
We are here at Heavy TO in Toronto, a huge area backstage with the one and only Melissa Auf der Mauer. Did I say your name right?
Yeah, I mean, we could, if we were like in the Germanic world, we'd say Auf der Mauer, but we're in Canada, so we say Auf der Mauer, whatever you like.
Auf der Mauer with an A.
Yeah, hey, exactly.
We wanted a female's perspective of how Heavy TO is going, so we have to ask you, how's it going?
Thank you very much for recognizing the female perspective exists. As a total honor, like last year, Heavy MTL, I was the sole female fronted act, and today at Heavy TO as well. And it's an honor to be the accepted woman. You know, whether that's it's amazing that a lot of people don't notice that there's not a lot of females upon it, and so like I mentioned, like, oh, I'm the other girl, like, oh really, we didn't notice. But it's important to represent the ladies who love heavy music. I mean, because they're out in the crowd, I see them, and then they're out there too. And so whenever I get an opportunity to be sort of in this musical zone and I do it for them. I do it for the ladies that aren't up there.
And that's good that actually that you're not being recognized as like, oh, you're the only female, because that actually shows acceptance, you know?
That's a good point. Very good. Yeah. So maybe, but I still feel like it's important to like recognize that, like, at least, you know, and I actually like thank the promoter guys. I'm like, thanks. You know, I know I'm like not traditional metal, but I'm heavy. I believe in headbanging and magic pyramids and a lot of, I share a lot of the same mythologies in my music than a lot of the bands do here, although it just might look and sound a little different.
That's good, because different is always good. Now, your set, like you said, it was a little bit different. How do you think it was perceived by the fan base?
I was very, very satisfied. There was, I get a gauge because I was sort of up for the tough crowd, and I get a gauge and I see some ladies that maybe aren't as familiar, and then they sort of get in, they start communing with me. Then I see some like really big guys who are wondering, you know, sort of taking a moment, and then as soon as I see one of them either throw the horns or shake their head, I point to them. I'm like, thank you. So I like the challenge of winning over the people who maybe don't know what to expect, and I was really pleasantly surprised by the politeness of the Heavy TO crowd. It was great.
And you have to be polite to Mrs. Auf der Mauer. She is pregnant, and she gets a little extra sympathy votes, so you have to, you know, right?
I know, had they done anything, I definitely would have pulled the pregnancy card. But this is my last show of, I was on tour for most of last year. 2011, I became pregnant, and I only accepted a few key like one-offs, and this was too much of an honor to say no, but this is my last show of 2011, and I cannot wait to tell the story to my little future girl that we played Heavy TO for the last show.
So technically we're getting the female perspective from 2 points, right?
Exactly. That's what I tried to explain to the crowd, who were sort of like, what's she talking about? I said, I got 2 heartbeats going for you tonight. Yeah.
In 2010, your second CD, Out of Our Minds, corresponded with a short film. How did the idea of these projects come about?
Well, basically, a lot of the mythology and storytelling that I put into songwriting, I see in storylines, whether it's, you know, my belief in magic or mysticism or witches and Vikings, all the things that I imagine in my songs. I decided it was time to sort of branch out and bring the content of the songs into different formats, which was in this case a short fantasy film and a comic book. And I went to art school in Montreal. I grew up in Montreal, and music was always going to be sort of my hobby. I went to school for photography and film studies, and so my background is in that. And after making my first solo record that I released in 2004, I decided, well, next time I make a record, I want it to be a new, life is too short to do the same thing over and over. So I wanted to find a way to like bring all of my passions of visual arts and storytelling into my love of music. So it was more of a kind of personal commitment to expand as an artist and to also give people more. I mean, it's not only because now, and what's beautiful about the 21st century is we have access to so much technology that you can actually make a film on a smaller budget, and you don't need to rely on a big Hollywood backing. And so it was taking advantage of the 21st century accessible technology and feeling it almost a responsibility to give the audience more. If I'm going to make a new record, I want it to be more than a new record. I want it to be a deeper world that they can go into. I also think that, you know, the way that music has evolved and the albums, I mean, I still buy albums and listen to albums, and some people even still buy vinyl or buy vinyl again, which is great. But I wanted to build like an experience where it's not gonna just be, I mean, if you want to just listen to like 3 songs off of the iTunes download, you can. But for those like me who want more, like for example, I love Mastodon. Like I can't get enough of Crack the Sky, and I watch the making of the thing. I, you know, read all the liner notes because I want to know the whole world that went into the songs. So it was also just feeling like I wanted to give people what I want, which is just deeper layers in the case that they wanted more than just the music.
And why she said Mastodon, because they're behind us and are getting ready to go on stage very shortly.
I am going to watch that.
And, you know, I think everybody out there knows that you were a part of Hole way back when, during the heyday. And Courtney put the Hole together again to go out on tour last year. And probably everybody wants to know why, you know, you weren't a part of that.
Well, she and I had a couple conversations about it. And I really felt like to do reunions, which are very common nowadays, I mean, it's always, I guess you have to do it really with a lot of planning. And I didn't feel that we were on the same page of how to make, whether it's a comeback or you know, a celebration of the past, whatever, however you want to call it. We weren't on the same page of what all the parts that would have to line up to make that really special. For example, I felt it was very important to have the original members, and she was sort of more looking to the future and, you know, was not afraid to bring in new people and make a new record, whereas I thought, well, wouldn't it be cooler to have like a best of everything we ever did in that first decade and show like a retrospective and celebrate that, where she just sort of wanted to like show future, new album, new band members. So we were just totally on a different page, and I respectfully declined being part of it. Yeah.
So you guys still have a relationship to friends and just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, she is like an eternally like cosmic sister of mine. I mean, when she, you know, back in the heydays of things, speaking of being, you know, the only women, you know, we had a very strong bond in that we are both completely committed to music, and there wasn't a lot of women parallel peers to ours then, and most of the festivals and tours we did, we were always the only women. So we have like this eternal respect, but we couldn't be more different as people. So it's not like we hang out to just have tea and scones. It's not happening.
Courtney loved having tea. I just can't envision it.
But I love her like a, you know, like that crazy family member. And I'm not saying she's crazy. I'm just saying like that strange thing where you are connected forever. And I have so much respect for her. Like, I mean, she's a force of nature. You cannot stop that person.
Courtney's an entity upon herself.
Yeah, and I respect, and I still haven't shared the stage with such a wild like force like that ever again. So we definitely have a totally open, cool relationship. Yeah.
And just switching subjects here, going back on your history, you worked with a wide array of musicians, including Rick Ocasek of the Cars, Fountains of Wayne, Rufus Wainwright, who's obviously a lighter artist. Do you have any collaborations coming up with any artists that we should be aware of, or are you pretty much focusing on the family thing with your baby coming?
I am. Well, all of my records, so the last 2 records I made are all based and inspired on collaboration. So like my first record I made most notably with the Queens of the Stone Age camp of people, Chris Goss, their producer, and then Josh and Nick and a bunch of, so that was sort of like a big presence on the first record. The second record, Glenn Danzig, was one of my sort of like big dream collaborations. I'm really proud of that collaboration on the last record. And then future collaborations, I'm friends with the Mastodon guys. I will continue poking them and waiting for an opening, a crack in the sky to see if I can ever get one of those redheads into a studio with me. But I have an EP actually that I'm making in this few months before the arrival of the Future Lady with an amazing band from Norway, a black metal meets industrial meets jazz, believe it or not. It's a band called Shining, not to be mistaken with, there's a Shining in Sweden and there's Shining in Norway. Their big come out album is called Black Jazz, and it is quite literally black metal, jazz, and industrial, all wrapped into one thing. It's one of the coolest, like, groundbreaking stylistic albums I've heard. I played a few festivals with them last summer in Europe. I was blown away, and I hit it off with Jorgen, the band leader, and so we have been working on a short, longish EP of songs of influence by heavy male artists that have inspired me, Danzig, Typo Negative, Sabbath, and doing a sort of totally different sonic take on a bunch of those bands. So that's an EP I'm working on for this year, which will sort of carry me over while I start contemplating and writing the next record, while I learn about what it is to build an alien life force out of blood, flesh, and bone.
And you also are a photographer, and you've had works done, showings and whatnot. Do you have any plans of doing any more of that?
One of the big things I've taken on is I started to archive my negatives. I am not a digital photographer. I've been shooting film since I was 15, so I literally have 20 years of negatives that I am archiving as we speak. I found a young woman intern, like from a university, who wants to and comes in once a week. It's going to take a year or two to do this amazing project where once I have all of my 20 years of negatives scanned, I want to do a book. And by that time, books won't even just be books. They'll be like things you can like live in and hear. So I love the idea that I could have a sonic, visual photo book that you can also maybe have sound and instead of maybe like writing, because I wanted to also sort of be a retrospective of what I've experienced in music and in my life. So maybe there'd be an audio component of stories. I don't know, but that's what I'm sort of. That's no rush, because that I could put out when I'm 90, and the negatives, the photos will continue to take on new meaning with the change of with the the looming apocalypse or the energy crisis. We'll remember the 90s very differently then too.
Well, wrapping up here, obviously, Melissa wants to watch the Mastodon set like we all do, and you have the baby coming, and you're going to be working on the EP. What else should we know and expect out of you the rest of this year and going into 2012?
Silence. I don't know. I need to actually, because I worked really hard on Out of Our Minds the past few years. I also became my own label and took the whole independent route, which I highly recommend if you're prepared to work 17 days a week. But I'm really looking forward to sort of unplugging so I can get back to hearing what the future songs are coming out of, because there's a lot of, I think most musicians nowadays would agree there's so much extra stuff outside of the music that you have to sort of wrap your mind around. And I need to, I think any musician needs to unplug so they can go back into the quiet zone which is part of actually why I welcomed the future. If I have a child, it's a forced sort of disconnect, but it's also a new connection to something even bigger and better that will most likely inspire the hell out of me. So a lot of quiet.
So I would say go check her out on tour, but this is the last show you're going to see her for a while. But we want to wish her the best of luck on your new endeavors with your baby, of course. And check her out in 2012 because she'll be back, like I said, with an EP and possible tour dates, correct?
Absolutely. I'm playing 6 months pregnant, so I'm sure that means I could play a few months after a baby. I'll see what happens. By next summer, I'll be back for sure.
And check her out on her website, and you might want to plug that.
XMADMX.com. That's me, Melissa Auf der Mauer, framed by X's.
So check that out, and I couldn't have said it better myself. BackstageAxxess BackstageAxxess.com. Thanks for taking the time.
In a dream, when a dream was